I wouldn't say we set it too high, but thank you. But
Yeah,
yeah,
so it's honestly good to be back. And full disclosure, being engaged with the Aladdin DAO has worked out, positively for the Kingmaker podcast. So you all have a booster program, and could you share a little bit about that, Crouguer, just so people who can be involved know what it's like to be engaged with this community?
Yeah, for sure. Like we, Aladdin's a very small, like a very tight team, and one of the things that we've always kind of, I would say, struggled with, but one of the challenges that we've always had is really how do you amplify your message and get your voice out, like basically like crypto marketing stuff. But we're not looking for a PR type team here, right? And so we came up with this idea of a booster program, uh, which is just this way of basically providing token incentives to people in the community who are out helping to do this kind of like education and spreading our message and just kind of the sort of marketing and education side of Aladdin. So both of the two products that we've been working on over the last, I guess, year now, the Concentrator and Clever, each of them has a booster program where anybody who wants to participate can basically just informally get started making memes and content and tweets and threads. Really, whatever is your specialty, there's always a way that you can sort of chip in and help out. And
Our
then
our specialty is doing extremely infrequent podcasts. Does that help?
it helps a lot. It helps a lot. And I think Lannero's gonna tell you the story later that like that's how he got involved with Aladdin in the first place. So
That is,
that's
yeah.
huge.
Well, it's also, I mean, the booster program. Like we're kicking off with the booster program. That's also the initial entry. Like I heard about Aladdin for the first time and heard about Crouguer for the first time through your podcast, which is kind of crazy when I think about it. We were talking about like when that might have been, and I don't know. It seems like it was many years ago, but I'm sure it was just like 3 months ago.
No,
But I
it was
heard
23 crypto years ago.
yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. I don't even know how to do the math in crypto because it's like fluctuating. It would be differential equation,
Yeah.
to do the time math for crypto. But I actually heard the podcast, and that's what triggered me to say, you know what? Let me take a look at this protocol. And then I jumped into Discord and started just like everyone does, asking a bunch of remedial questions. But then as I started digging in, at some point, I remember Crouguer pinged me and he was like, "Hey, we have this booster program." And I didn't even know about the booster program. But I think the nice thing about the booster program is that it's almost a how to find people who are contributing already and then reward them for that contribution. Right. As opposed to the more traditional marketing approach where you're like, you're basically bringing people in and their job is to basically form a love of your product, whereas here it's like there are clearly people who like the product, they use the product, they tweet about the product, they're engaged around the product, and then kind of after the fact we're really saying we should reward and recognize these people and help them you know get more out of their contribution. So I totally give a lot of credit
Totally.
to the podcast.
Well, and that's a big story of crypto, right? Like there's the top down approach, which is like, you hire the PR firm and draft the press release and so on. And then that's where the money is spent. And then if you end up with a grassroots sort of following with that top down approach, it's just like they're not really being rewarded apart from just supporting something that they love. Whereas coming from this bottom up approach, right, finding the people who are excited about it and making the barrier to entry really low, right? If you're into this and you want to talk about it, then come on by and just do it, and come to the Discord and just talk to us and share the things that you've been sharing, and we put you on a ballot, and then the community votes to reward you with some tokens. That's now all of the tokens that the protocol is spending, quote unquote, for that kind of marketing are going to the place where, in my opinion, it should be, which is with those grassroots and those people who support the mission.
So
Yeah.
it's not from the VCs dumping it?
No, that's stage two. That's
Oh,
stage two.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are. One of the analogy though in the SaaS, software VC funded world is very much this is all around, customer acquisition costs, I guess you can say. And the big raging trend right now is around product led growth, which is very analogous to this booster driven type of program that we have with this, bottoms up approach. And the beauty of product led growth, or, the theory of the beauty of product-led growth is that by really focusing on a product-led growth strategy and having a company that can show product-led growth, the reason why it's more attractive is because your users are your biggest fan base. And people say that all the time. It's kind of like, trite marketing advice, but in product-led growth, it's real and you see it in the data. So if you have a product that people love, and they become your engine for growth. And again, like you see it in data, there's over the past few years, there's like this huge amount of metrics that have been generated around how to know if someone really has product-led growth. And I think in crypto, that's almost like out of the gate, you see that being a very dominant theme, as well as, of course, the VC funded protocols. But I think we all know how we feel about those.
Right. Yeah, I think the book was Raving Fans, right? Is that
that's
that the idea there?
That's right. But listen, Llanero, when you say product-led growth, in that world, what you really mean is like tricking your customers into being your marketing department for free.
Yes.
Well, when you say it like that,
No.
it makes it sound kind of bad, but
that's the rest of the world.
Here's
well, exactly. That's what's so different here.
But this is where the stats have actually become, I would say, pretty sophisticated, because there are efforts to simulate product-led growth in an artificial way, through any number of mechanisms. But there are other ways to get at whether or not you have genuine product-led growth, and that's when you start looking at underlying stats of actual engagement and how long it's like, are they just on to pull other people in, or are they actually using your product? How do they actually spread the word? You get into like this whole viral coefficient, and I'd say there's a lot of effort being put into trying to understand whether something has genuine product-led growth, because very few products really do. And when you find companies that have it, and when they show it very strongly, it's something special. So people are spending a lot of time trying to find it.
Llanero, I'm going to stop you right there. You sound smart. I'm just going to put that out there.
Crouguer is questioning that comment.
Okay,
you just
fair
lost
enough.
You lost a lot of credibility in his eyes there.
Well, I said sounds. I didn't imply.
Fair point.
So with Kingmaker, we didn't set out to be involved in a booster program or do anything. We've never done that at any point. But as that program came about, we were able to get plugged in on it. And again, Crouguer, you do a great job of sharing the wealth. Like, as people contribute, you all pull them in, like you said. Whereas it could be very easy to leave people off the ballot to try to get a bigger share for certain individuals. But it's been great to be part of this community, even if we are infrequently there. But enough about the booster. There's so many things that have happened since our last recording back in 2020 or whenever it was. So let's just dive right into it. So I guess where to start, though, to ground people who maybe didn't hear our old podcast, but could you guys just briefly cover AladdinDAO, Concentrator, Clever, just so we're all grounded on, and then we'll dive deeper and really dive into the CVX portion of what you guys have been working on.
Do you want to kick that off, Llanero?
Yeah, sure. So I think we started with the AladdinDAO concept. So AladdinDAO is, I think the right way to think about it from an origin perspective is, a collection of big-brained DeFi experts that have all come together to find the best crypto projects and to invest in those crypto projects. But what we've really been focused on, and I think where we're probably going to spend most of today talking about, is some of the sub projects that have spun out of that process, the research process, the discussion process, where I think we realize if we can't always find some of the products that we want to invest in, we can make some of them. And the first product along those lines was Concentrator. And the gap that Concentrator really filled in the market, in my mind, was around the idea that you have these great products built on top of Curve. Everyone knows Convex, and we all love Convex. And we saw a really compelling product coming out of Convex around Llama Air Force, where you could take your bribes from Convex and then you can just kind of auto compound it into Curve. And the Concentrator, addition to this ecosystem is, why stop at just the Convex bribes? Why not actually separate out what you can invest in and what you can obtain your yield in? So if you look at Concentrator at its heart, it's really breaking apart the investment and the yield strategies into two separate parts. You have your investments in what we call harvester vaults. So you can go through your harvester vaults. You can kind of pick the tokens that you want to hold. Right now, a lot of people are in stables, but maybe you love try crypto. You can pick and hold those tokens, and then the yield you generate from them, you can pick separately. So you can decide which compounder you want your yield to be going into. So we call them our compounder vaults. So you can pick aCRV, you can pick abcCVX, you can pick aFRAX-ETH. And what this does is it allows you to really have this very automated but controllable investment around your DeFi tokens. And of course, we're always focused on high quality and long-term hold and automating all of your processes. So that's Concentrator.
Yeah, and
the other product
just to
that we have.
let me jump in.
I'm
going to jump in on that. One of the things that you touched on that was really correct is this idea. What did we take from Aladdin in the beginning? And one of the themes that is run through all of Aladdin stuff since the very start is this concept of farm and hold, right? And this is another sort of aspect of Concentrator that was really, it seems like a small change, but it's actually a pretty big fundamental shift, which is, rather than when you're farming a protocol, any auto compounder in the market, and there are several, is going to just take all the tokens that you're farming and then dump them for more of whatever you're farming with, whether that's stables or some other underlying asset. And so not only, as Llanero says, you're able to separate this concept of what are the tokens I want to hold as my principal and what are the tokens that I want to earn, but we're also taking this concept of, let's earn the tokens that are worth holding, right? Let's concentrate into these DeFi tokens. And it was no mistake that we started on Curve and Convex, and the very first compounder token was aCRV, which was it's backed by CVX Curve and farming the single staking yields on Convex. And so rather than dumping all of your CVX and your Curve and everything in order to buy more of your underlying, now you're holding these tokens that you have a long-term view on, right? This is not for people who don't want to hold Curve and Convex tokens. It's long only farming. And it's by taking that approach, Concentrator is way more supportive of the ecosystem as a whole, right? We're not here to just extract whatever we can,
right?
So much as we're here to invest in these protocols and to optimize that process of earning and holding exposure to these protocols that we think have great long-term potential.
Awesome. Yeah, because the underlying value proposition is that you're building up more of Curve, and for a long time, aCRV was our only compounding vault, and so that was the most popular. It remains one of the most popular. We just launched one for aFRAX-ETH, and that has actually now jumped in popularity, so it's overtaken it. But all these things still are really powerful and healthy for the ecosystem because they encourage essentially putting the money back into the ecosystem, holding it and leaving it there. And you see that trend.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So much better than farm and dump. For sure.
Yeah. Farming and dumping when we go through a lot of the design and a lot of the even thinking about things like fees and times, like all an underlying premise of all the products really is how do we encourage farming and holding, and how do we actually put in mechanisms that discourage farm and dump, that discourage kind of whale games that come in, because that's something that you see in a lot of the protocols. If they're too easy to enter and exit out of, that's when it becomes really attractive for whales to come in. And so, that is a philosophical underpinning of a lot of the products that we create. So that's Concentrator.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
go ahead.
I was just going to say it's on that kind of subject. It's really all about like finding the people who want to be long only and setting up a system that supports them and has like the smallest possible surface area for those kinds of like arbitrage exploits or whatever, right?
I'd rather be up only though. Can you do something for that?
Well, that's going to be V2. We're still thinking about that.
Okay.
Maybe that's a like the third product.
Okay.
Up only.
Okay.
Right.
Aladdin up only.
I think
that used to be an
has been
FTX
patented.
podcast, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Get in early on those tokens. Boys.
Okay, cool. All right, so Clever. What in the world is Clever?
So Clever. You want to tackle Clever, Crouguer, since I just spent all of the time.
All right, yeah, you
Concentrator.
Can. Right. Okay. So
we'll go back and forth. I'll chime in on Clever.
All right. Yeah, you can lace the track. So Clever is another another product that we started built out around this Curve ecosystem, and Clever is like a mashup of a few things, but at its heart, Clever is all about letting people who have a really high conviction in CVX and in convex bribes to earn more, right? And so the very first Clever product, like I said, built around CVX, allows you to bring your CVX to Clever and deposit it with Clever. And on the back end, that CVX is vote locked and begins the process of delegated to Vodium and begins the process of earning bribes. At the same time that you've locked that CVX in, you're able to borrow up to 50% of the number of CVX that you locked in this synthetic CVX that we created called KlebCVX, right? And then that KlebCVX that you've borrowed, there's a couple of different ways to swap that into real CVX, into the core CVX token, which you can then do whatever you want with. The one of the obvious things that you can do is loop it back in again and create a small leverage position so that you're actually leveraging up the bribes that you earn. And the whole idea here is just to take people who have a long view on CVX bribes and to give them a mechanism to be able to earn more. To support that side, to support this ability to because the value prop there is very clear. To support that side, you need this. You need a way for CVX to come into the system, and so that's where the liquidity pool is. We have a liquidity pool on Curve that pairs KlebCVX to CVX, and that liquidity pool has bribes paid. And yesterday, we just launched a huge new piece of the puzzle, which we'll I think get to probably pretty soon.
Yeah, because man, being involved, your peg is terrible, guys. What's up with that? Come on.
It's not a peg, my friend. It's not a peg.
So, yeah. We should probably get into why it's not a peg, but we should. The thing about the liquidity pool is it is where essentially the market of borrowers and suppliers meet, and so to the extent that you think of it as a peg, it looks horrible, but what it really shows is that the demand for borrowing CVX under the Clever CVX umbrella is almost insatiable, and not to mention a huge backlog of people who had deposited their CVX, claimed KlebCVX, but didn't have the ability to swap out until relatively recently.
That's
so
right.
You have a combination of two things happening, both this backlog and a genuinely very, very high demand for the product.
Yeah, and what's interesting, and probably a good time to point, as you say, the demand for this is pretty amazing. We've just recently passed over 1.4 million CVX locked on the collateral side, and that's pretty that's pretty darn exciting for us.
Yeah.
I guess
Considering it was zero, so it went from 0 to 1.4 million, like one of the largest, I
well,
guess,
exactly. Yeah, no,
repositories of
there was no
CVX.
nest egg here, right? Like this was this
Yeah.
it's all organic growth, and that's kind of our thing. We didn't really get a boost to start it, and so that kind of, we get a nice demonstration of a product market fit early and a validation of what we're doing, right?
So let's dig a little bit into the peg concept, and because I think that'll lead really well into where you want to go,
Yeah,
where
please
we
do.
all want to go,
Please
which
do.
is the ABC
Sure.
CVX.
All right, so you've got this swap pool. Now, like I mentioned that there are two different ways that you can swap your Clev CVX into real CVX. Okay, and to understand both of those, there's one further detail that you need to see, and that's when you've locked your CVX and it starts earning bribes. Those bribes pay down your debt. So as your locked CVX earns bribes, your debt to the system is reduced by the amount of CVX that flows in. So your debt to the system, which is denominated in Clev CVX, goes down with every CVX that flows into the system, right? So now the system is holding this CVX. Your debt is smaller, but the system has the CVX that was harvested from your bribes. Everything is all the bribes are swapped into CVX. That CVX is placed in the furnace, and the furnace is really just a mechanism for selling CVX back into the market in exchange for Clev at 1-to-1. So any Clev CVX in the market can come to the furnace and eventually swap out for the CVX in the furnace at 1-to-1. If there happens to be a pile of CVX sitting in the furnace, well, then you could make that swap immediately. Bring your Clev CVX, get real CVX out, and there is there's no question of the exchange rate on the curve pool. But if you what's happened, of course, is because we operated for a long time without the curve pool. That was what we call beta mode. And so we've got a huge amount of Clev CVX that is in the furnace. And when there's more Clev CVX in the furnace than new CVX that comes in, that new CVX gets doled out proportionally to everybody who is deposited in the furnace. So the way that works right now is that every day, if you have Clev CVX in the furnace, every day some of that Clev CVX gets burned in exchange for CVX that you can then take out. So now that's the critical piece of the puzzle that we're missing to talk about here. We have the furnace that's this mechanism for distributing CVX in exchange for Clev CVX at 1-to-1. If you also have a curve pool where the price of Clev CVX versus CVX varies, if the price is lower, so if the peg is off in the case of a peg, now again, we don't call it a peg and there's good reasons for that, but if you can get Clev CVX cheaper in that curve pool, you can actually arbitrage the difference to the furnace. You can buy Clev CVX cheap in the curve pool, bring it to the furnace, and have it exchanged for full price CVX, right? You get a 20% discount when you buy it in the first place, and you exchange it 1-to-1 for CVX in the furnace over time. And the reason we don't call it a peg is because that mechanism, that starts to sound like a bond. That is, in fact, very analogous to the real financial world concept of a zero coupon bond. So you're buying this Clev CVX token, and you're told that in the future, this Clev CVX is worth 1 CVX. Exactly 1 CVX, not more, not less in the furnace. The only question is, how long, at what point in the future is it worth that 1 CVX? So the whole idea now is CVX is flowing to this curve pool for 2 reasons, right? One is because we are paying incentives for that curve pool. And you might ask, okay, well, is this a pay to play kind of thing? It's not. And the reason is because the Clev incentives we pay into this curve pool are basically a stake on, they're a claim on the revenues of the protocol. The revenues of the protocol come from fees charged to the borrowers. So the fees charged to the borrowers basically back this Clev token. If you lock the Clev token, you earn a share of those fees. And so by distributing the Clev tokens, we're basically using what the fees that we charge to the borrowers to pay the people who are bringing the new CVX, which is just the way it should be.
Crouguer, let me just interject a little point. So Crouguer alluded to, or he mentioned the time function on furnace, right? So like the underlying mechanism for furnace is that it will convert your cLEV-CVX to CVX. It's just a matter of time. And so in many ways, the thing that we're talking about as a peg, cLEV-CVX to CVX price, it should always be discounted, and that discount should, in a perfect system that's reached equilibrium, it should represent the time value of the difference of what's happening in the furnace. So if it takes
that's fair.
10 years, that's going to be a larger discount than if it takes 10 days.
Right.
And so, but it should always be at a discount, and that's one of the reasons why we don't say peg, because it should actually not ever be 1-to-1 if the market is acting rationally and if everything's reached equilibrium.
Well, unless exactly, basically, it would be 1-to-1 in the case where there were no pending claims in the furnace at all.
Yes,
right.
Yes. Which would mean that the demand is low too.
That's right. That's right. So making Clever function optimally is all about balancing the demand for borrowing with the reward for supplying, and it's mediated by this curve pool. But it's an important point. We talk about pegged assets. Generally, these are wrappers. They one of this wrapper represents, like in the case of CVX curve, one CVX curve represents one curve that's been locked away inside convex, right? Or by convex inside curve. That's not what cLEV-CVX is. cLEV-CVX represents future CVX. It doesn't exist yet, right? cLEV-CVX represents bribes that have not been paid yet, right? Basically, if you think of it that way, you've provided a bunch of CVX that's going to earn bribes, and now you're allowed to borrow cLEV-CVX, which is basically getting your future bribes today.
All right, so let me recap, make sure I understand it. You take your CVX, you can put it into Clever, you can borrow against it up to 50%. Yep. You get your cLEV-CVX, you can put your cLEV-CVX in the curve pool. Then from there, you can earn, either you can put it in the furnace and have it convert. That's one way. Or you put it in the curve pool. In the curve pool, now you'll also earn the cLEV token as, bribes coming in as a reward. You can lock that cLEV token to get the fees that the protocol is earning through that token. Mm-hmm. Is that just the short breakdown of everything you just said?
Yeah, there's one thing that I would argue here, or not argue, but I would sort of highlight,
you're argumentative. Go ahead.
I am very argumentative. This is a known fact. When you are supplying CVX as with the intent to borrow, typically once you get that cLEV-CVX, the idea is not just to farm the curve pool, right? The furnace is a good option right now because the fees haven't been phased in yet. But once you're paying fees on the harvests, just taking your cLEV-CVX and depositing it straight into the furnace is probably not going to be a very lucrative strategy, right? So the whole idea here is, for borrowers, you typically want to be able to swap to CVX, right? You want to be able to get a hold of CVX and maybe redeposit, loop it back in, and use that mechanism for earning more bribes, right? Typically, when we talk about,
like someone in Discord said, you can use it to go buy a car.
You can go buy a car with it. Exactly. Yeah. I guess it depends on how many CVX you have. I'm not sure about the car that I could afford with that, but you know what I mean. The other side of this is, I think, better conceptualized as people who come in who don't want to lock up their CVX and borrow and borrow against it, right? People who maybe, for whom the 16-week lock is, for whatever reason, they don't want to have to deal with that. Because remember, when you supply your CVX to Clever to get locked away for bribing, it is locked in the convex CVX token, which means that you can't get it back until it unlocks 16 weeks later. So for people who have CVX but maybe don't want to take that lock, you can supply it directly into this curve LP, or you can take it to the curve LP, swap it into cLEV-CVX, and put that into the furnace. Both of those are totally liquid strategies, right? You can withdraw back out. Now again, the discount may vary over time, but you can always withdraw at any time. So typically, the better way, I think, to conceptualize Clever is, on one side you have the borrowers who are comfortable taking a lockup and they just want to have maximum CVX bribe income. And then on the other side, you have the CVX suppliers, who are some combination of LPs and people who are arbitraging that price difference to the furnace. And those people get the benefit of having a fully liquid CVX position, right? You can, at any time, you can take your Clev CVX back out of the furnace. You can withdraw from the LP at any time. And so all of the rewards that get paid to the LP and all of the arbitrage gains you get in the furnace, those are yields on CVX that you got without having to lock it.
And this is you're making a great distinction that I think a lot of people who are new to Clever don't fully realize, which is if you're depositing in Clever CVX, as in you're depositing to be able to borrow Clev CVX, that is a locked position. That is not liquid. And, there are liquid CVX wrappers. We ourselves are going to start talking about essentially a liquid CVX. But if you're entering in from the Clever CVX portion, that is not liquid. It is a borrowing product. And I've definitely seen some confusion around, whether or not it's a liquid thing. We definitely have people coming into the Discord periodically who, aren't quite clear if it's liquid or are comparing Clever CVX to liquid CVX wrappers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So great explanation. But if Billy Mays was here, he would say, but wait, there's more, right?
He would. I mean,
what? Okay, go ahead. But want to hear what was released, I guess, in chronologically when we're recording yesterday. But take it away. Right. Take it away.
Okay. So what should be clear from Llanero and my discussion here is that these liquid CVX earning opportunities, the furnace arbitrage, the LP, those are manual work. Those are pretty labor intensive, and you have to have a pretty good understanding of the system to be able to understand, where you're putting your tokens and when and how you're compounding the back end. So in the course of trying to basically help encourage this flow of CVX on these liquid CVX strategies needed a facelift. They needed some way to be more easy to use, but also even more lucrative. And so why do we want to do that? Well, right now, as we've kind of talked about already, Clever operated for a long time in beta mode where a lot of Clev CVX was minted, but there was no way to immediately swap any of that into real CVX because the curve pool didn't exist yet, right? So we end up with a huge amount of Clev CVX that's ready to go and that theoretically is wanting to swap to CVX, but just when we launch the curve pool, in order to do that, obviously there's way more Clev CVX that wants to swap than can be swapped through that curve pool until you start getting new CVX flowing in. So Clever and Concentrator have teamed up to basically each one of them is highlighting its own strength here to create a product called abcCVX. So this product essentially takes all of that stuff that I just talked about on the liquid side, the LP, the bond to the furnace arbitrage loop, and automates it all. So all you need to do is bring CVX and deposit it into abcCVX. There's a 1 day lock just to sort of limit the kind of arbitrage games that you might lose on. So you bring your CVX, you claim it as abcCVX a day later, and now behind the scenes, that liquid CVX, which you can withdraw any point, right? It's fully liquid. You can withdraw your share of that vault at any time. Is both farming this furnace arbitrage loop as well as farming the LP rewards. And those are curve gauge rewards, right? Because we know the Clev CVX and CVX pool is earning rewards on the curve gauge. So those all those gauge rewards are swapped into more CVX, which is then looped back in. So
okay, so quick question.
So, yeah.
So with your current Clev CVX, you can't. Is there a way to convert? Well, do you have to convert to CVX first in the curve pool and then convert it to the ABC?
ABC is not a place for Clev CVX. ABC is all about bringing CVX in. Now, if you have Clev, you could swap it if you are comfortable with whatever the discount is and you pay attention to slippage. Those are just kind of general caveats that I tell everybody. But but this is all about This is all about CVX, right? This is not, the point here is not to give you something to do with your Clev CVX. The point here is to draw lots of CVX into that curve pool so that you can swap your Clev CVX. Like that's the reason that you want that Clev CVX. You want to turn it into real CVX, right? Either over time in the furnace or right now in the curve pool.
Well, and the other thing to think about is, so Clever CVX is really all on the borrowing side, right? And it's working great. I mean, tons of people want to borrow. And so our job as a protocol is to balance out this two-sided marketplace. And what we clearly see is we want to work on the supply side, which means new CVX, right? It doesn't make sense for us to focus on Clev CVX, 2CVX, because that loop already exists. It exists in this curve pool. And so the problem with the supply side is that the place where it had to be resolved previously was really in the curve pool. And just in the same way that convex being put on top of curve, because we love curve, but it can be intimidating for people who don't really want to spend all of their time on curve. And so in the same way that convex being put on top of curve made it so easy for people to start investing in being LPs in curve pools, abcCVX makes it really easy to provide CVX and then let this kind of liquidity director mechanism, as Crouguer calls it, I like that term, figure out the best place to put that CVX to use. Whether it's going to be in the curve pool or whether it's to actually swap for some Clev CVX and put it into the furnace. And it kind of automatically makes that decision for you. But if you think about a concentrator and what it does, its job is to automate and simplify access and usage of all these different pools. And so it's a perfect fit for concentrator. It's actually just automating and simplifying the mechanism that we described for liquid CVX. And that's kind of step one of abcCVX.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was just thinking we should highlight there's the abcCVX mechanism is a concentrator thing. All of that complexity and annoyance.
Before you go any further, just a couple quick protocol type questions.
Sure.
Anytime you stack smart contracts, understandably there is the potential for risk.
100%.
So as you're launching this new product, audits have been done. Like what's a little bit more on the dev side as far as where this stands before you continue on with part 2.
So Aladdin does not push unaudited code to mainnet. That is a rule that we have always hewn to exactly. So anything that Aladdin has released has been audited, and that's no different for abcCVX and any of the other Aladdin products. So abcCVX is the automator mechanism is all concentrator, and that audit was completed. There's actually an update to that audit pending. And the full report will be released. We're just waiting for the final report from the auditors, but they have given us the before the actual report is written, they gave us the stamp of approval for pushing the code out. We wanted to make sure that was out yesterday on Thursday because this past Thursday was when the curve bribes kicked in, right? That was when those gauge yields start being paid out into those pools, and so obviously if the audit wasn't ready, we weren't launching, but our awesome auditors came through for us. And so, everything we push is audited. And you're absolutely right. Like the more you layer contracts on top of each other, the more risk that you get. I would say there is maybe a principal benefit here in the Aladdin ecosystem is because, the Clever and the concentrator teams are at this point in time, basically the same people. And so you do get that benefit of that close integration, where obviously when you're writing the contracts that are written for concentrator are written by a person with an extremely deep knowledge of the Clever contracts and vice versa. So when we're building these automations on top of protocols that we have already previously built, I think there's a little smaller surface area for trouble. But all the same, everything still goes through this audit process that we insist on.
Yeah, thanks for that.
One thing I wanted to say before I continue is that, for context, the audience, that since I disappeared for 2-3 months, I'm behind. But the product I was gonna say, you're explaining the arbitrage, and I'm like, why don't you just make a product that just makes it like simple that people don't have to learn it. And then you went into abcCVX. I'm like, oh, okay, you guys were already ahead of the curve.
We did. We
Yes.
did. Well, and that's
Yes.
yeah, and it's one of those things where, you know, the borrowing mechanism needs validation first, right? Like, do people want this product? And then the liquid CVX stuff, right? Like farming the LP and arbitraging this furnace difference, like that stuff has existed, but it just wasn't easy. And so
Yeah.
abcCVX makes that process really, really easy, and sort of like gives you a way to capture all the yields that were available there. And again, and it also helps like smaller stacks come in too, because then you can amortize the cost of, like, all of the gas costs get amortized across the whole pool, just like everything with concentrator, right? So it lowers the barrier to entry.
How much CVX has come in the first day?
Do you know what? Those numbers come out because you have to claim after 24 hours. Start looking tonight at 7 p.m.
I guess we could look at the contract. Yeah, we could look at the contract to see how many people have.
I'm saving it as a surprise for myself.
Oh man,
I know.
I know. This podcast will be out like in 4 weeks when we finally edit it. So like, you can tell us now. We won't be breaking any alpha.
We don't know what it is. We don't know yet.
I mean,
you said you could look at the contract. I sure can't do that.
Yeah. Well, sure you can.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody can.
No,
Jump in there.
Okay, yeah.
Now I'm curious. I would go over, but then I'm going to lose track.
We've lost
of what
Llanero for the rest of the call.
Yeah, no,
for the rest
I'm
of the
egging
podcast,
him on.
He's gone now.
I don't think you can do it, Llanero. I don't think you can do it.
Damn it!
All right, I'll fill the dead space like I always do while he's working away. The last piece here that's kind of, I think, pretty important. I said ABC is a concentrator thing. It automates this whole process. But then think about, like, people bringing CVX to ABC is massively important for Clever, right? Like, Clever right now needs to figure out a way to get more CVX flowing in on the liquid side to support the huge demand that we already have and the backlog of demand that we have on the borrowing side. And so the second layer of abcCVX is, once you've claimed it, you can actually bring it to Clever and stake for Clev rewards. And so if you think conceptually about this is Clever incentivizing. And again, those Clev tokens are a claim on
stake
revenue.
Or lock?
Stake.
Okay.
It's totally liquid, right? And this is important because that the CVX provision side needs to be liquid in my view, right? There's a 24-hour lockup that just limits the ability to, like, arbitrage between abcCVX and the underlying curve pool. You don't want like a big arb opportunity to suck a bunch of value out of that pool. So we put a short 1-day lock on that. You deposit your CVX, and then a day or so later you come back and you get your ABC. But that ABC, once you've claimed it, you can come right straight back out again in CVX, right? You stake it on Clever, and it can be unstaked immediately as well.
And it has to be a differentiated product from Clever CVX, right? And so this is the appeal to people who still want to earn yield on their CVX, but don't want to lock it, because we already have the lock version, which is probably going to be, max yield, because you get all the benefits of the bribe under the locking mechanism and everything. So this is really the other side of the equation, as well as, a different product. It has to be a different product.
Well, and the whole point, the whole way that you go about designing a DeFi protocol, in my view, the best ones are the ones that connect people with different, like, sets of concerns together in a way that benefits everybody, right? You have the people who are willing to take the lock, and you have the people who for whatever reason don't want the lock, and that actually might be the same person. They might want to divide between the two strategies, right? The yields, of course, on the liquid side are going to vary with the price of Clev. They're going to vary with the price of Curve and CVX, because that's, when you're paying bribes, that's how the gauge rewards come. So there's lots of variation on what the actual yields are going to be, but fundamentally this is about connecting those two different kinds of participants, right? The lockup long-term borrowers with the liquid shorter term, like, want to be able to exit on a moment's notice people.
Good stuff.
I have figured out how much CVX has been deposited. I'm torn between whether or not I should tell you guys or make it a pleasant surprise.
So how many
I'm
hours
I'm
into
pleasantly
it are we?
surprised. we're we're what 20 hours into it, or not even a
20
full
hours?
day into it.
Not a day
12
yet.
maybe less.
Okay.
Not even a full
So
day.
Okay.
let's play higher or lower.
We're
100,000.
no, it's if you look at it relative to how much CVX is currently in the pool, there's currently 29,000 CVX in the Clev
curve pool.
CVX pool. Yeah,
Yep.
29,000. And so the purpose of this product is to really help bring new CVX into the flow so that people can kind of start borrowing, go all out crazy borrowing. I think we will see that pool grow a lot as
He's
a
being
result
so
of
cagey
this.
right now.
So
A
I am
lot.
being a little bit cagey. I am being a little bit cagey because I don't want to jinx it too. So
No, I completely understand.
Because again,
it's
when
under
people listen to
100,000,
this in
though.
4
It's
weeks,
under 100. Yes.
under
You'll see
100K.
it.
Okay.
Okay.
It's
So
under 100.
the
It's under 100. Yes.
the exchange rate of, as I've been sitting here watching it on the curve pool right now, is Clev CVX to CVX is 0.88.
All right,
We
so-
were what, 0.74 a week ago?
Yeah. Well,
that's
once those bribes started to flow, then there's the incentive is there to start moving funds in. We were incentivizing that Clev CVX pool for a long time on the Clever site itself, but this is, right here, this is a testament to the power of like a curve gauge, right?
Yeah.
Like this is like that. We should talk about that here because that's really what's happened. The big story, all this other stuff that we've released is really kind of fuel for the fire. But ultimately, we're incentivizing people in Clev into that Clev CVX and CVX pool, and you had to be familiar with Clever for that. And when we flipped the switch, we did it. Went through a process a couple of weeks ago, getting a curve gauge for Clev CVX CVX pool, so that we can start taking that same Clev that we were paying directly and bribing with it for curve emissions. And as soon as we started doing that, the interest in this pool went through the roof, right? And so that just like, if you're wondering why curve is why curve is where it is, that's kind of like that's maybe the answer to the question, right? Like curve is so powerful partly because of the visibility that you bring. Right now, anybody can go to the curve site, and these pools that we have created will show the reward rates right on them, because that's how the gauges are paid. And obviously curve's reach is much farther than Aladdin's is at this point, right?
Keith
At
and
this
Alan,
point?
I'm disappointed that you guys haven't said that's why Curve is the kingmaker.
Oh,
I thought Convex is the kingmaker.
Yeah, well,
Convex is the kingmaker on top of Curve.
Well, they both, in a way, it's the VE curve that we're all playing with here, right?
that's right.
Absolutely.
But that's that's kind of like a big story.
It is a big story. It is really a testament to not just the power of the protocol, but also the efficiency of the bribing mechanism, right? Like a lot of conversation has been put into how much more leverage, why it's a very efficient bribing system, and we see it here, right? Like for the same dollar for dollar, you not only generate a lot more interest, but you get a lot more efficient bribing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. It's really both.
Yeah.
But I like that was really remarkable. How binary that was, and actually you saw the same thing even with the Clev token, right? Because we have a gauge for Clev ETH as well. And once you get that integration into the Curve ecosystem, it really opens a lot of doors, right? It brings credibility, but it also just visibility. And everybody knows now, like, if you don't know Clever, then maybe you don't understand the value proposition of the Clev token. And so you're never going to maybe go to the trouble of like finding the website, looking at the staking options, trying to figure out the value of the Clev token. But when we bribe in Clev, suddenly that token, it becomes a little bit more, now it's up to the people who are voting to decide on the value of of the CLEV token and not the people who are actually using the protocol. It kind of separates those two interests, right? And now anybody who's LPing, they know that their rewards are paid in Curve and CVX too if they go in via Convex. So it kind of just takes away the question of needing to understand the CLEV token at all.
Totally. And then based on your time horizon with that CLEV token, it's an opportunity to swap it into something else or
Well,
lock it
totally
away.
That's right. Like, I mean, I think
Yeah.
part of the beauty of the way these protocols work is they abstract when they abstract things away. Like the CLEV token is like, it's in the market, it's tradable. Everybody who has dug into the details of it, I think, generally likes it a lot. Like we designed that token, like Concentrator, to be pretty valuable, like to have a legitimate claim on revenue, to be limited, like not to have any like tricks built into it, you know, not to have like a really high FDV that's all kind of like going to be unlocked in the future or something like that. So the CLEV token itself, if you decide you want to dig in and really like understand it, there's a lot of good stuff to learn there. But I think that the magic of bribing with it means that it separates the people who are providing liquidity, right? Like the protocol, Clever the protocol needs this liquidity provision. It needs the flow of new CVX. It requires that. That's the reason that the protocol pays these yields, right? But if you say now to anybody who is providing liquidity, but prior to getting the curve gauge, they had to accept payment in the CLEV token, which if they dig into it, they probably love it. But it's a lot of extra work. You have to understand the protocol, everything else. Whereas now when you can come and provide liquidity and get paid in curve, like bribe yields, you don't actually have to do that extra bit of work, right? The CLEV is paid in bribes, and now it's the people who are voting that are deciding on its value, and the market in general is kind of like choosing a monetary value for it that the voters are kind of using. But
Right.
it separates the need to understand the token deeply from still being able to provide the liquidity that we require.
All right, Crouguer, I feel like you're baiting me into a value
I'm not.
conversation
I'm
and
definitely
models
not.
to value thing. So, but I'm not going there. We're like 55 minutes into this already. So we have to do another show soon-ish, you know, whenever we get
I think
around to
so.
it. And I want to dive deeper in that topic, probably with the Llanero, not you. And then I also want to talk about future roadmap type stuff on a future episode. But I sort of want to put a cap on this now and ask you both two questions. These will be my final two questions. Alejandro, if you have another one, go for it. But besides everything we just talked about, what is your favorite other product you have or specific pool or whatever within the AladdinDAO world, Concentrator, Clever, or whatever? What's your favorite product? And then what's your favorite thing you're watching outside the Aladdin world in crypto right now? So that's sort of where I'd like to take it here at the end and get a few thoughts on what's going on currently.
You go, Llanero.
Great questions. Yeah, sure. Okay, so within the Aladdin world, I mean, I have, one of the choices I made in kind of
Not financial advice.
Llanero
Not
was,
financial advice.
for sure, not financial advice, but one of the choices I made in creating the Llanero, persona is creating also a publicly viewable wallet. So that way I'm always, it's very clear what my moves are and what it is I'm doing for this wallet. And then I do have other wallets, but they're never at odds with this wallet. So I'm not doing one of these, secret bait and switch type things. And so if you look at my activities within Aladdin, I've moved to, and I think this is one of the powers of the Aladdin product, I have a lot moved into kind of a stable principal holding position, but earning, two of my favorite tokens, which is Curve and ETH. Right. And so those are like, I love that about Concentrator, and those are what the products that I'm personally using a lot. But I'm going to start, and I have already started switching more of the stables a little bit into some more risk on assets. Some of it is just because, abcCVX came around. So that's our new shiny thing. I actually Definitely converted some stables. Actually, maybe I converted ETH. Yeah, I think I converted ETH into CVX to ape into abcCVX. So, of course, I'm keen on that. Outside the Aladdin ecosystem, I've actually been consolidating a lot of stuff onto the Aladdin products. So, outside of the Aladdin ecosystem, I mean, I'm like, this is almost, it's so popular. The two things that I've been playing a lot around are so popular that they won't be a surprise to anyone. One is around GMX, so have spent a fair amount of time playing in and out of GMX. I've actually de-risked a little bit from GMX lately, but it's still a protocol I follow really closely. The other one is related a little bit to Concentrator. It's actually been seeing some peg issues itself, is around liquidity and chicken bonds. So I've been playing a lot with that. And that's also been kind of a fascinating story. I mean, I love their story and the narrative of chicken bonds, probably even more so than the product. I haven't actually looked a whole lot at and dug into the internals of the product nearly as much as I should have, but it's just like such a great story. I love the way they position everything. How about you, Crouguer? What have you been doing outside?
So very
Aladdin?
apeable.
We spent so much time. Yeah, it's very apeable because you get an NFT, right? Like, hey, man, anytime you get an NFT, that automatically adds something.
And that goes up only. Okay, sorry to cut in. Crouguer.
All right.
No, so Crouguer, we always only talk about Aladdin. I'm actually curious what your outside interests are.
As I mentioned earlier, we are a very small team, and so we end up like end up putting way, like, I have almost no crypto mental focus outside of the Aladdin world, so I would not take any of this as necessarily a good idea, like I've got some inside story. But within the Aladdin world,
me ditto.
Yeah, well, it's just the nature of building like this, I think, right? Like all of our time is consumed by getting these products right and getting them out, that we have a less good grasp on what's going on everywhere.
My biggest
within the
position
Aladdin world,
outside of, I just looked. I'm looking at my own debank profile here, and I just realized my biggest position outside of the Aladdin ecosystem is actually on Umami. Still, so I guess if where you place your bets matters, then that's the protocol. And I like the team. I pay a lot of attention to what they do, and I like a lot of what they talk about. So there you go.
There.
Okay.
Two from Llanero, which means maybe I can get away with 0. Okay. So inside the Aladdin world, I like the basics, right? So for me, for a long time, I really was enjoying farming TriCrypto into aCRV, right? So the TriCrypto harvester into the aCRV token, because TriCrypto has a really nice high yield, and TriCrypto, if you kind of like drill down to the level at which it kind of functions, it's a good thing to hold, especially if you think prices have further to fall, right? If you think you're kind of in the downswing and you want to sort of dollar cost average into a pool, but you kind of have a sense that there's maybe further to fall, going into something like TriCrypto, you kind of you're basically buying all the way down, right? Like your stable component of TriCrypto stays the same. If the Bitcoin and ETH portions fall, then you end up basically de facto buying more, Bitcoin and ETH. So on the way down, it's a really, I think, a really nice way to balance a lot of risk, right? Like you can still move more stables in, DCA in, and but still get a little bit of the upside of a continued fall in price, while simultaneously earning aCRV, right? And like you might not want to directly, I mean, any DeFi tokens and stuff like that are sort of more altcoiny, they're going to probably experience much more dramatic price movement than the blue chip stuff, right? And by blue chip, I mean, ETH and Bitcoin. And so even if you don't want to have full principal exposure on those DeFi tokens, you can still earn them, right? With Concentrator. We banged on about that for the whole darn episode. Like it's kind of the thing that we do. So that's what I liked. I like TriCrypto on the way down. And then, once you're there, then it's like, basically if you want to change what you hold in principle, maybe, I was farming just stable vaults for a long time, but again, farming into aCRV. and enjoying that aCRV yield. And I'm going to sneak in a really quick plug here for aCRV because we didn't really talk about this, but yesterday we released 3 different major product upgrades, and one of them was upgrading aCRV to reflect Convex's new staking contract. And I don't know if you guys have seen that, but now when you stake CVX Curve, you choose whether you want your yields entirely in stables or entirely in governance tokens like Curve and Convex.
I saw that. I'm
Yep,
so
I saw
excited
it.
for that.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
about time, but I didn't even think about it, but I'm glad they thought about it.
Well, they did, and it's
Yeah.
like it's a huge improvement, really, really well needed for CVX Curve, and I think that's going to help. Speaking of pegs, I think that's going to really help bring their peg up,
CVX curve.
the CVX Curve peg. But it actually creates a really interesting opportunity for Aladdin because aCRV is farming the CVX Curve behind the scene, and so we needed to update the smart contracts to handle CVX Curve's new staking. And those smart contracts now are able to reposition, by a parameter change, which we choose, whether it's all stables or all governance tokens. And because we're compounding those into more CVX Curve, the optimal move is always to take the bigger dollar amount and compound. So aCRV, with this new release from CVX Curve, aCRV got a lot more powerful because now we can change as the value of the stable versus the governance token yield portion changes on Convex. We're just automatically going to keep tracking the highest yield and compounding that back into more aCRV, right? So
now
this
we have
change
both
that CVX
aCRV
Curve made.
Yeah.
Go.
Well, I was just going to say that now that you're pointing that out, I just realized we have both aCRV and abcCVX with these liquidity director mechanisms, right?
That's right. Yeah,
I like it.
It's but like aCRV, it was a great way to hold. Like it was arguably it was one of the great ways to hold CVX Curve before. I think it's the hands down winner now because on the back end we're just going to be able to make sure that that's always peak yield, right? And now Convex has given us this lever to pull, but it also means that for people who are farming it, they actually have to manage it a little bit more, right? That management is hidden, but you still get all the benefit of optimizing with aCRV. So aCRV is like that's it's our first product, and it's arguably still one of our best. And so that's why when I talk about stuff that I like on Concentrator, I'm farming into aCRV a lot.
Cool. And
okay.
Outside, blah blah blah, aCRV. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
What else?
Okay. I have been slowly becoming more and more enamored with Frax and what they're doing. I mean, again, there's no surprises here, but having sort of come into this Curve world well after Frax was established, it's not always obvious in the first place who the really smart players are. Like when you first jump in, you've got established players, you've got Convex, you've got Curve, you've got Frax, and you've got dozens of other protocols that are all playing in the bribe game. And it's not like, the longer I stay exposed to this ecosystem, the more clear it is who's in some ways, I'm going to say who's already won. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah.
Who's really like, who had the most foresight, who's been playing the game in the smartest way. And for me, it's increasingly, it seems like, if I could go back in time and buy like more tokens at the bottom, Frax would be on my shopping list for sure. And I mean, I don't even have to go back in time. I'm going to probably be increasing my own personal position in that, I think, just because they just make a lot of right moves, right? I like how they deal with people in the industry, and what they touch seems to go well.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool.
And AFRAX, I mean, SFRAX ETH is just really, really well thought out. I mean, it's just like a perfect example of both. Yeah. It's just so well done. Really well done.
He's playing chess, and all the, geniuses in crypto are playing checkers versus Sam on this stuff.
Yeah. Or tic-tac-toe.
Right.
That's right. And I was recently beaten by my 8-year-old daughter at checkers, so I don't want to.
Don't admit that.
Wait.
Oh,
all right.
Right,
so
sorry.
Wait.
Next.
Yeah. Wait until they beat you in tic-tac-toe. That's the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
You got nobody to blame but yourself for that.
Sheesh. All right. So next
Yeah.
episode, we're going to talk USD curve because, there has to be something coming that you guys will be able to leverage
Oh, yeah.
that.
Oh yeah,
We're
we
gonna
are.
talk
We have got eyes peeled for
token value models.
that.
Llanero. We're going to just mute
Mhm.
Crouguer during that portion.
I'm going to be complaining into the mute button the whole time.
Okay, fair. And then we'll just talk roadmap stuff. But that's
Let's do it.
those are three really good topics that I think people would be interested in down the road too. So, but yeah, that's what I have. Alejandro, you have any final thoughts, questions?
Two things. One, I'm sorry, but I can't let go of the aCRV. So I I
either.
want to ask because so now you have two paths between the getting stables or the governance tokens. And one thing I wanted to ask is that what do you think would be the thing that aCRV would do the most? Like choose either go stables and then just get more from the market, buying from the CVX curve Frax BP pool, just like selecting governance tokens and then arbitraging the 10% DPEG that's currently in the market. You could get 10% more tokens if
So
you convert it.
the way the mechanism works is it's purely based on what gets you the most CVX curve, right?
Yeah, market sentiment.
That's it. And so there's no there's really no decision to be made. It's if
It does
the
automatically.
it does it automatically. If
Okay.
if the stable coins swapped into curve, like if swapping the stable coins into CVX curve gets you the most CVX curve, then that's what we do. If
Okay.
earning the governance tokens and swapping those, or even like when the peg is really good, there's even a mechanism built in to actually supply those CRV, like to actually stake pure CRV and get CVX curve back. Obviously, that's not attractive right now with the peg where it is, but the contract is able to do that if the peg ever gets to the point, and it has been in the past where it's like virtually dead on. So the contract is just going to do whatever gets you the most, right? It's just gonna it's gonna rebalance the which way it wants to take yields based on what has the highest output. And in the very first week of CVX curve, that was governance tokens, and then the very second week it was stable coins, because that's the curve convex on the back end started flowing those stable coin, and of course when there's a period of really high activity on curve, then that stable coin portion, which is driven by curve volume, gets higher, and so aCRV is just going to smoothly switch over and harvest the most on the back end automatically when you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, good. Okay, that's the right question. Because even though of course the code is going to do it itself, a part of me is hoping that it does the governance tokens more just so it can help the peg. Because I remember the days when it was like right on point and there was no arbitrage opportunities. And personally, I want to see those days again, just because as like a fellow like a curve member, like everyone curve community was happy after like for so long. It was either negative down 10% or 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So have another mechanism in place to try to like that helps move the market. Not move the market. That sounds bad. But you get what I mean. To help,
Yeah,
like, move
and
the
I
peg.
mean, but if you zoom out
Yeah.
and think about it, no matter which way the yields come, it's supporting that peg, no matter which way it goes. Because if it's on the governance token side, you've got curve and CVX tokens that are what the yields paid in, right? Those are swapped into CVX curve, which is building up the peg. And if the yields come in stable coins on the other side, those are swapped into CVX curve, which is building up the peg as well.
They have a pull for it now. I always forget that they connected it to the base pull, since there's three different protocols now. Well, the two protocols not connected.
Yeah, in what you need to remember, Alejandro, is A in aCRV stands for absolutely nothing you need to do. So just
this man is a marketer.
That's what you need to remember.
I like it. I like it.
So we've been going so long.
That's the tagline.
There you go. We've been going so long. It's now beyond 24 hours from when you launched. How many CVX is locked?
Oh my god.
Llanero, come on.
Well, look, now I have to. Well, I'm not going to refresh it, so now it's like half an hour out of date. It is 58,000 so far.
All right.
Okay.
So
That's
okay.
not too bad.
It's
Nice.
58,000. No, I mean less than a day. 58,000. I mean, if that trajectory continues, and it's interesting because it's kind of a
Plus in a
blend.
bear
You
market.
have well, in a bear market, you have a blend. You have some people who are coming in with small bags. You have some larger bags, but it's very, at this point, I would venture to say, given that you have to wait a day and nothing's showing up right now, that this is just people tipping toeing in, and I'm projecting a little bit, right? But
I think
I
that
think you'll grow much faster from there.
Well, and that's there are a couple of, it's always difficult to look at these things right in the first moments, and one of the things that is not at all visible yet is the extra incentive layer on Clever, right? So remember, you deposit your CVX, you get abcCVX back, and then a day later you claim it, then you take it to Clever to stake. So right now it's showing like 186% or something on the website for abcCVX. That's just because there's no like actual deposits yet. Because they're still, they'll be claimed later today, right? I think 7 p.m. Eastern today is the first time when any of the deposits are claimable and able to be like start earning. And so that's going to go. But now you got that whole second layer on Clever, and I think people are going to realize pretty quickly that abcCVX APY, that's just for holding that token, and that does not include the additional yield that you get when you bring it to Clever. Right.
Yeah.
And the Clever single staking vault yields don't show up until people actually start depositing. So it'll take a little while for the sort of, as usual, things will take a little while to stabilize, to see what actually the yields are. And basically everybody who's dumped CVX in right now is aping, me included, by the way.
Yeah, me too. But I mean, just look at the current curve pool. There's 29,000 CVX in there, and it's about to get flooded with twice that amount.
Triple,
if not a lot more. Right. So it's gonna have. I mean, what we're hoping for, obviously, is this virtuous cycle to be created. Right. That's kind of the goal, and it really is to fulfill and accelerate the supply side of this marketplace. So I think it's going to have its intended effect.
If anybody hung in here till the very end, they got.
First of all, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. But they got the real scoop there. Yes, you've made it.
You should get a T-shirt.
Yes, you are now a year older in crypto terms.
That's right.
All right, guys. Awesome conversation today. A lot of fun. Future episode, we'll cover some of those topics and probably more. Any final thoughts? Any final words for everybody out there, Llanero?
Come on by our Discord channel. We love chatting, as you can tell. Engage us on Twitter. we very much we love DeFi for the mechanisms and all of these kind of geekery. So come talk to us about it.
Awesome. Crouguer, final thoughts. Final plugs.
I'm gonna back Llanero up. I'm gonna say come by and talk. The other thing that I would suggest people do, if you have the chance, is to check out the community calls every Wednesday, and there's recordings of them stored up on Google Drive. Come by the Discord and somebody can help you find them. But we drop alpha in those pretty regularly, and we talk a lot about stuff. Like, we've been talking in those community calls about this abcCVX product for weeks now, for a couple of weeks. And so if you like getting a sense of what's next, that's a good place to hang out. And it's, I mean, again, it's a lot of nonsense. The other thing is that Charlene, one of our big brain, and actually the founder of Aladdin, she's a great financial mind, and usually in these community calls, she likes to give her sort of like view on the macro market. Not so much, I mean, obviously not investment advice, but really just like a picture of what she sees globally really as like the big issues impacting macro, and I always find those to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool. Just don't
Yeah.
dox yourself in the Google Doc, right? Alejandro, fine. You close us out, man. Final words.
Well, I will say that we're coming back. We're gonna be doing episodes again, or at least that's the goal. We're not gonna be disappearing again.
No.
Fingers crossed.
No promises. Only if the market's good, we'll be here.
But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed, and let us know in the comments or on the Twitter like who else you want to see. That's about it for me.
Thanks for
guys.
having
This
us,
was a lot of
guys.
fun.